I have told this story exactly 4 times in my life, and each time the person I told it to went quiet in the same way. Not uncomfortable quiet, but the kind of quiet that means they are adjusting something behind their eyes. My name is Prailness. I served as protocol adjutant to Empress Vorin of the Drev Concordat for 11 years, and I was standing 6 meters away the afternoon. She stopped a room full of senior military officers and diplomatic staff with 8 words spoken at normal volume. I will try to explain what led to those 8 words. I do not promise it will make sense, because it did not make sense to me then, and I'm still not certain it makes sense to me now. The Caldern Bay Transit Garrison is not the kind of place empresses visit. It is a mid-route supply installation built into the flat rock of a transfer moon, all poured stone corridors and recycled air smell, and overhead lighting that hums at the precise frequency designed to keep personnel alert and mildly irritable. The Empress was there because the Caldern Accord ratification had stalled at the last waypoint, and someone had suggested a goodwill transit. The Empress passing through, shaking hands, being seen by the garrison's 400 personnel, softening the political deadlock by making it personal. It was my job to arrange the schedule, brief the commanding officers, and keep the Empress from standing in any location that put the garrison's structural deficiencies directly behind her head in the official photographs. The delegation numbered 31. I had the manifest memorized. I had cross-referenced it 3 times against the garrison's own visitor log. So when security adjutant Foreign Castle flagged a discrepancy at approximately the 14th hour, a human male, civilian rated, sitting at the delegation table in the main cafeteria, not on the manifest, not responsive to standard credential queries, because he was apparently unaware that credential queries were being directed at him. I felt the specific species of headache that comes from a problem that should be trivial and will not be. Castle's working theory was impersonation. The garrison cafeteria had 3 tables cordoned for the delegation. The human had apparently sat at one of them by accident, found the seating comfortable, and simply remained. He had a tray. He had a cup of something pale and warm. He had a thin booklet open beside his cup, water-stained, the kind of thing printed on actual paper rather than filed on a reader. He was eating without urgency. He had not looked up when the cordons went in around him. I crossed the cafeteria and stood beside his table. He looked up then. He was perhaps 43, a lean, unremarkable face, dark hair going gray at the temples in a way that suggested he had not taken the standard supplement. He had the eyes of a man who had recently been told something that had not stopped being true. "Sir," I said, "this section is reserved." "I know," he said. "I'm with the delegation." When CORR, attached archivist, civilian grade 4. "My credentials are in the system, but I think I filed under the wrong transit code." He said it without apology, without anxiety. He said it the way a man says something that is simply the situation. Then he looked back down at his booklet. I asked to see the booklet, because I did not know what else to do. He handed it over without hesitation. It was a memorial record, a service summary for a garrison surveyor named Holt Maven, printed by whatever passes for a memorial office at a posting I did not recognize. There was a photograph. There were dates. There were 3 short paragraphs that described Maven's postings in the dry language of official remembrance and said almost nothing about him as a person. Someone, I assumed RR from the pressure of the hand, had written 2 lines in the margin in a script I did not immediately recognize as any standard notation. I handed it back. I told him I would confirm his credentials with the delegation coordinator and that he should remain where he was. He nodded. He turned the booklet back to the page he had been reading. I had the credential confirmed within 4 minutes. When SORR was legitimate, a civilian archivist seconded to the delegation to manage the historical record documentation of the Accord ratification. He had been in the Concordat for 6 weeks. He had filed his transit credentials under the wrong code because the transit classification for civilian-grade documentary staff had been updated 3 months prior, and he had used the old form. It was in every sense a minor administrative error made by a man doing a job he had not done before in a posting he had not held before. I should have gone back across the cafeteria, confirmed his status quietly, and moved on to the 17 other items on my schedule. I would have, except that the Empress had entered the cafeteria from a north access. 2 minutes ahead of schedule, because she had finished the equipment bay walkthrough early and her security lead had made the judgment call to advance the timeline. This was the kind of thing that made my work interesting in ways I did not enjoy. The Empress did not do the cafeteria visit the way her predecessors had. She did not stand at the front of the room and receive a briefing. She walked. She moved through the room at a pace that suggested she had nowhere to be and was choosing, of her own volition, to be here. She stopped at tables. She asked questions. Her questions were always one of three things: what someone was eating, what they were working on, or what they were looking forward to returning to. She was good at making personnel feel that the question was genuine, because it was. I had watched her do this for 11 years, and I had never caught her performing it. She reached Winsoarar's table at the 14th and a half hour. He did not stand, because he did not know to stand, because no one had told him that the person approaching his table was the Empress of the Drev Concordat, because the advanced security sweep had cleared the room 40 minutes ago, and Winsoarar had arrived after the sweep and before the visit and had not been briefed on anything, because he had not officially been expected to be there. She looked at the booklet. She looked at him. "What is that?" she said. He told her. He said it the same way he had said it to me. Direct, without performance. He said it was a memorial record for a colleague who had died 14 months ago during a routine survey transit. He said the man had been good at his work and bad at sleeping and had made better coffee than anyone Soar had ever worked with, which was a specific and useless thing to miss about a person. But there it was. He said he had been carrying the record with him since the posting because he kept meaning to find the right time to write to the man's family and had not yet found it, and he supposed he was reading it again to remind himself that he owed that letter. He said all of this to an Empress he had not recognized. He said it as though she had asked a genuine question and deserved a genuine answer. She was quiet for a moment. The two security staff who had realized what was happening and had arrived at a control walk that was very nearly a run were quiet too, because they could read her posture, and her posture said, "Do not interrupt this." She looked at him for a long moment. Not at the booklet, at him. Then she turned, and I want to be precise here because I have replayed this moment many times in the years since. She turned not to her security lead and not to me, but to the room. To the 200 and some personnel in the cafeteria who had gone very still because they had finally worked out who was standing at the archivist table and were now waiting to learn whether they were about to witness a diplomatic incident or something else. She said that human remembers. 8 words. Normal volume. The way you say something that is simply the situation. The room did not respond immediately. It went still in the way a room goes still when something has been named that no one had found a name for. The Empress was known to have opinions about the Concordat's mandatory emotional suppression protocols. She had never stated those opinions in a public venue. What she had done in the Caldern Bay garrison cafeteria was point to a civilian archivist eating his lunch and reading a dead man's memorial record and name him in front of 200 witnesses as a man who was doing something that the rest of them, chemically, institutionally, deliberately, were not. She looked back at Wincor. She said, "Find a right time. Write the letter." He said, "Yes, ma'am." He still did not know who she was. I confirmed this afterward. He found out 3 hours later when a fellow archivist saw his name on the afternoon security log and asked him what he had said to her. He was quiet for a moment, the way people are quiet when they're adjusting something behind their eyes. Then he said he had just answered her question. That is the whole story. I have told it 4 times. The 5th person is you. He wrote the letter. I know because the Empress's correspondence office received a copy, forwarded by Maven's family with a note attached. The note said only that they had not known anyone was still carrying him. I think that was the point.